Imagine you wake up and you just absolutely crush your morning routine.
Oh, the dream.
Right. Like you get to work, you nail this massive presentation that you've been sweating over for literally weeks. You even eat a perfectly healthy lunch instead of, stress eating takeout like usual.
A miracle in itself.
Exactly.
Right.
And then later in the afternoon, you manage to navigate this incredibly tense phone call with a family member, and you do it with total grace, just a mathematically perfect day.
Yeah.
But then it's like 4:55 p.m. and you send an email to a crucial client. And right as you hit send, you realize there is a glaring, totally embarrassing typo in the very first sentence.
But I feel the anxiety just hearing that.
Right. So why is it that when you lie in bed tonight just staring at the ceiling, your brain will completely ignore the 99% of the day that you absolutely dominated, and you'll obsess entirely over that one typo?
It's so universal.
It really is. And welcome to the deep dive, because today we are looking directly at you.
Yeah,
As you listening right now. Our mission today is to really untangle this incredibly stubborn subconscious architecture of self-denial.
Yeah, that gap.
Exactly. We're exploring that painful, echoing gap between our ideal selves and our current selves. And we're examining how this gap quietly sabotages, well, pretty much everything, from your daily mood to your most intimate romantic relationships.
And I think what's really fascinating here is that we aren't looking at this self-sabotage as some kind of inherent character flaw.
Right.
It's not about you being weak or pessimistic or, lacking willpower.
It's just such a relief to hear.
It is.
Yeah.
The foundational premise we are working with today from our sources is that our self-sabotage is actually a highly evolved, deeply entrenched series of learned protective mechanisms.
Protective mechanisms.
Yeah, it's your brain's cognitive machinery trying, in a very misguided way, to keep you safe from what it perceives as threats. And because it is a learned mechanism, a literal neural pathway, it is something we can actively untangle once we start observing the patterns instead of just, suffering through them.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to make it very, very clear to everyone listening. This deep dive is not about just thinking positive.
No, definitely not.
We aren't here to tell you to smile more in the mirror or manifest a better reality. We are looking at a mechanical breakdown of how our brains actually process failure and success.
Yeah, the accounting systems.
Right, the accounting systems we use to evaluate our own worth. And to understand a lifetime of chronic self-doubt, we really have to start at the absolute micro level. We have to look at how we process a single ordinary Tuesday.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, you simply cannot understand a lifelong pattern of holding yourself back without analyzing what happens between the time your alarm goes off and the time your head hits the pillow. That scenario you just described, the perfect day ruined by the 4:55 p.m. typo, it illustrates a phenomenon we can call the last failure bias.
The last failure bias.
Yeah, neurologically speaking, we are just heavily biased toward recent events. But when it comes to self-worth, it goes far deeper than just recency. The amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, it treats negative stimuli as vital survival information.
Oh, wow.
So an embarrassing typo is processed not just as a mistake, but as a literal social threat.
It's like you drop your keys right as you unlock your front door after that wildly successful day at work.
Oh yeah, perfect analogy.
Suddenly you're standing there in the dark, fumbling on the porch, and you don't feel like the competent professional who just crushed a presentation. You feel a sudden rush of cortisol.
Your chest tightens.
Yeah, and you feel like the clumsiest, most incompetent person on planet Earth. The entire narrative of the day just flips in an instant.
Precisely. The brain selectively harvests the negative data points from your day, and it completely discards the overwhelming volume of positive data points.
Just throws them out.
Completely. And it does this because positive events, like eating a healthy lunch or giving a good presentation, they don't register as immediate survival threats. So they aren't consolidated into your emotional memory with the same intensity.
That is wild.
Right. What you are doing, entirely subconsciously, is constantly gathering materials to blame yourself.
Yeah.
You are literally building a case against your own competence.
A case against yourself.
Yeah. And this habit quietly, continuously chips away at your baseline of self-affirmation. It is a slow, methodical erosion.
A slow erosion. And it's not one big catastrophic failure that ruins our self-esteem. It's 1,000 tiny paper cuts that we inflict on ourselves right before bed.
Exactly.
But why do we arrange our lives so that we are always on the losing end of this equation? Like, psychologists look at this through the lens of two very different scoring systems we apply to our daily lives.
Yeah, the deduction method and the addition method.
Right, those two.
This is where the mechanics of self-sabotage become just glaringly obvious. The vast majority of people, particularly high achievers or those prone to anxiety, they subconsciously run their lives on a deduction system.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in this framework, you wake up in the morning and you implicitly assign yourself a score of 100 points.
Like a perfect test score.
Right. You are starting the day with an expectation of absolute perfection. And then, as the day progresses, you simply subtract points for every single deviation from that perfection.
So you oversleep by 10 minutes. -5 points.
Exactly.
You forget to thaw the chicken for dinner, -10 points. You stumble over your words in a meeting, -15 points. By the time you are brushing your teeth at night, you're operating at a massive deficit.
Yeah, you're in the red.
Yeah.
But it's worse than just losing points. In a deduction system, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much emotional labor you exert, or how many things you do brilliantly, the only things that actually register on your internal scoreboard are the losses.
I hear that, but let me push back on this a little bit. Doesn't holding ourselves to a 100-point standard just ensure we do our best? I mean, we're conditioned since grade school to aim for the 100 on the test.
Right, that's the conditioning.
Yeah, so if I wake up and don't expect 100 from myself, aren't I just settling for mediocrity? Doesn't starting at the top keep me ambitious?
That is the exact cognitive trap right there.
Yeah.
It perfectly masquerades as ambition, but mechanically, it is a recipe for chronic despair.
Wow. Chronic despair.
Yeah, think about the math of a deduction system. You can't earn points for doing things well because you already gave yourself the maximum points in advance.
Right.
Doing your job well, being a supportive friend, paying your bills on time, exercising in a deduction system, these actions don't earn you a single point.
They just keep you afloat.
Exactly. They merely prevent you from losing points. They become the invisible, exhausting baseline expectation.
So the absolute best you can ever do in a given day is break even at 100.
Right.
Which is literally impossible because you are a biological organism, not a robot. Therefore, every single day, mathematically, ends in a loss.
You end up with a permanent, inescapable sense of insufficiency. The effort you put into just surviving and navigating a complex world is never evaluated or rewarded by your own brain.
You just expect it.
Yeah. You are setting up a game where winning is structurally impossible, and losing is the only guaranteed outcome. Over years and decades, this doesn't just make you sad, it alters your self-concept. It creates a baseline state where you genuinely believe you are always falling behind.
Which creates this really powerful illusion of lacking.
Yes, the lacking.
If we are grading ourselves on this rigged, deductive scale, it suddenly makes total sense why so many of us constantly feel like we are missing something crucial. We are operating under an all-or-nothing cognitive distortion.
It's exhausting.
It is. You could have a thriving career, a beautiful apartment, great friends, but if you haven't hit your fitness goals, or if you aren't in a romantic relationship, you look at the entire tapestry of your life and declare the whole thing a failure.
It's the 100 or nothing mindset. You are evaluating a complex, multifaceted human life using a binary pass or fail system based on impossible perfection.
Right.
But what is truly revealing is the nature of this lacking. If you were to sit down right now and rigorously document the things you feel you are lacking, you would quickly realize they aren't based on objective realities.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like, if I say I lack a romantic partner, that is an objective fact. I mean, I am either single or I'm not.
Yes, the relationship status is a fact. But the profound feeling of insufficiency attached to it is not. The feeling that your life is completely invalid without it is a cognitive distortion.
Oh, I see.
Often when people write down what they lack, it's not just a partner, it's I lack success, or I lack stability, or I lack worth.
Very vague concepts.
Right. What is the metric for those? Is success a specific dollar amount in your bank account? Is it a specific job title? If you hit that dollar amount, does the feeling of lacking magically vanish?
Usually not. I mean, the anxiety just attaches itself to the next goal.
Exactly. Because the feeling of lacking is just that a somatic, emotional feeling. It is a generalized, free-floating anxiety masquerading as an objective failing.
Masquerading, that's a great word for it.
Yeah, you are fighting an emotional state by trying to achieve external metrics, which is like trying to cure a migraine by painting your house. It doesn't address the mechanism at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because you'd think that someone who constantly feels like they are lacking, who is just exhausted by this deduction system, would be desperate to imagine a happy future.
You would think so.
Right. You'd think they would use daydreaming and hope as a psychological escape hatch. But actually, it's the exact opposite. People actively put the brakes on imagining a happy future.
This is perhaps the most tragic consequence of the cognitive architecture we're discussing. When you try to envision a successful outcome, a peaceful future, or genuine happiness, your brain actively resists it.
It fights back.
It throws up a massive defensive wall. And it's vital to understand that this resistance isn't because you don't want to be happy. It's not a twisted desire to be miserable.
It's rooted in a deep historical fear of disappointment, right? It's the brain learning the wrong lesson from past pain.
Precisely. If you have hoped for things in the past, if you have allowed yourself to envision a beautiful outcome and then had that vision shattered, your amygdala logs that experience.
It takes notes.
Oh, it takes very detailed notes. It learns a terrible equation. It says hoping equals vulnerability, and vulnerability leads to pain. So it decides that imagining happiness is the necessary prerequisite for experiencing devastating heartbreaks.
Wow, so the very act of hoping starts to feel like a literal threat.
Yes.
It's like your brain is this highly aggressive bodyguard. You are walking down the street, and the bodyguard sees hope walking toward you with a bouquet of flowers.
I love this analogy.
And instead of letting hope approach, the bodyguard tackles you to the concrete, cracks your ribs, and says, I saved you. They could have had a weapon.
That is a highly accurate, if brutal, metaphor.
It feels brutal when it happens.
It does. The desire for happiness is so strong, and the fear of losing it is so profound, that the brain preemptively shuts down the imagination. It's a ruthless calculus. Your brain decides that a state of chronic, low-level misery is safer than the high-altitude risk of genuine hope.
Because misery is predictable.
Exactly. You know how to survive in the deduction system. You do it every day. But hope requires you to step into the unknown. If you never hope, you can never be disappointed.
It's like refusing to plan a vacation to a place you've always wanted to go because you were terrified it might rain one afternoon.
Yes.
You want to go to the beach so badly, but the thought of getting there and having a thunderstorm ruin it is so unbearable that you decide to just stay inside your house forever.
It's a self-imposed prison.
You protect yourself from a hypothetical puddle by locking yourself in a permanent prison of your own making. And the wildest part is we don't even realize we're doing it. We tell ourselves we are just being realistic or pragmatic by expecting the worst.
We completely rationalize the trauma response. We dress our fear up as intellectual pragmatism, but it's really just the deduction system operating at a macro level.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying enough to apply this deduction system to ourselves in a vacuum.
Yeah.
But it becomes incredibly volatile when we drag another human being into it. This is why so many people utterly paralyze themselves in their romantic lives.
Yes, let's look at romance, because relationships are sort of the ultimate test of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
All these protective mechanisms, the rigged accounting, the ghost of insufficiency, the bodyguard tackling our hope. They don't just disappear when we meet someone we like.
No, they amplify.
They go into absolute overdrive.
When we try to date, we aren't just projecting our own zeros onto ourselves.
Yeah.
We start projecting them onto our potential partners and onto the future of the connection itself.
Right.
There is a specific anxiety that flares up here, which is the fear of ruining someone else.
Oh.
The moment someone prone to this self-sabotage tries to get close to another person, instead of imagining a warm, shared future, their brain fast forward directly to a disaster scenario.
They immediately start imagining how they're going to make this other person miserable, or how they're going to eventually embarrass themselves, or how their hidden flaws will be exposed.
And notice the speed of that cognitive leap. Before a positive image of a date can even fully form, the anxiety has already written an entire tragedy spanning years.
It writes the whole script.
It does. If we trace this back, this is often rooted in past memories of disappointing someone, or perhaps a childhood dynamic where they were made to feel like a burden.
That makes a lot of sense.
The brain is screaming, remember the last time someone relied on you. Remember how much it hurt when you couldn't be perfectly 100 points for them. We cannot let that happen again.
So it applies the brakes before the car even leaves the driveway.
Exactly.
You cancel the date, or you pick a fight, or you ghost them, all under the subconscious guise of protecting them from your own imperfection.
It feels noble to the person doing it.
It does, but how do you stop that? You can't just violently force the anxiety away. You can't just yell at your brain to start being afraid because yelling at it just confirms that there's a crisis happening.
Exactly. Fighting the anxiety validates to the nervous system that a threat is present.
Right.
The psychological approach requires observation, not combat.
Observation.
You have to acknowledge the anxiety, trace it back to its origin, and realize it's an echo of the past, not an accurate prediction of the present. You have to say, I am feeling the urge to run away because I am afraid of disappointing this person, not because this person is actually demanding perfection from me.
Which requires an immense amount of self-awareness.
A ton of it, yes.
But it is vastly better than the alternative, which is falling into what we often call the friend zone trap. And I don't mean the cliche of being rejected by someone. I mean why we can act perfectly natural, charming, and relaxed with our friends, but the absolute second a romantic dynamic is introduced, we freeze up and turn into awkward, paralyzed robots.
Oh, this happens because we set impossibly high hurdles for romantic relationships that we would never dream of applying to friendships. We dramatically overestimate the responsibility of romance.
It is truly bizarre when you think about it. I mean, look at your closest friends. We accept their flaws completely.
We do.
We know they are messy, or they are chronically 10 minutes late, or they have terrible taste in movies. We don't care. We love them for it. We allow them to be human.
Because the stakes feel lower.
Right. But the moment a relationship gets a romantic label attached to it, we suddenly expect both ourselves and our partner to be flawless deities. We put the entire interaction into this hyperbaric chamber of expectations.
Because the deduction system kicks in. We feel that we are now entirely responsible for this other person's ultimate lifelong happiness. And because we know deep down that we are not perfect 100-point beings, we immediately feel disqualified from the role.
Disqualified. That is exactly what it feels like. It creates this unqualified complex.
Yeah.
This incredibly pervasive modern myth that you cannot pursue romance or really any deep connection until you have perfectly built up your own confidence. You look at your messy apartment, your lingering anxieties, your unfinished goals, and you decide you currently lack the qualifications to participate in love. You tell yourself, I need to work on myself first.
The idea that you must be entirely healed, entirely confident, and entirely complete before you can enter a relationship is honestly one of the most damaging narratives in pop psychology today.
Oh, wait, let's explore that because it sounds incredibly logical on the surface. We hear it all the time. You can't love someone else until you love yourself.
You hear it everywhere.
Yeah, if I know I have a short temper or if I know I'm deeply insecure, shouldn't I fix my own mess before dragging another person into my orbit? Isn't it just irresponsible to date when I'm a work in progress?
It looks like sincerity and it looks like responsibility, but mechanically, it is just procrastination driven by fear.
Procrastination.
Yeah. Confidence and self-love are not prerequisites for connection. They're not a threshold you cross in isolation. Confidence is something that grows within the interaction itself.
Oh, I love that. Confidence isn't the ticket you buy at the box office to get into the relationship. It's the souvenir you earn while you're inside experiencing it.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Human beings are fundamentally relational creatures.
We need each other.
Exactly. Our neurobiology is wired for co-regulation. We learn who we are, we heal our attachment wounds, and we build our self-worth in reflection to how we interact with others.
So doing it alone doesn't work.
If you isolate yourself, sitting alone in your room, waiting to reach some mythical, sterile state of perfect completion before you allow yourself to connect, you are denying yourself the exact environment where genuine psychological growth actually happens.
You are demanding a 100-point score from yourself before you even step onto the field, which takes us right back to the deduction method. You are saying, because I am a 70 right now, I am essentially a 0, and therefore I am not allowed to play. But relationships don't jump straight to a completed, perfect form. They aren't pre-packaged Amazon deliveries.
They change, they stretch, and they grow slowly through friction, which means you are allowed to enter them as a messy, imperfect work in progress. You're allowed to be a 70 or a 40 and let the relationship help you build the rest.
But to do that, to allow ourselves to enter relationships as imperfect beings, we also have to radically rethink how we judge our own attractions and how we judge our partners.
Absolutely.
We have to throw out the societal scorecards that we use to deduct points from potential matches.
And this is deeply tied to that feeling of lacking we discussed earlier. When someone is operating on a deduction system, they don't just apply it to themselves, they apply it to the world. And this leads to a phenomenon where people experience profound guilt or confusion over unconventional attractions.
Right, like when you find yourself deeply attracted to someone who doesn't fit the standard societal metrics. Maybe they don't have a prestigious job, or they don't fit conventional beauty standards, or they don't have the right educational background. Your nervous system feels incredibly safe and drawn to them, but your conscious brain starts panicking.
Because the attraction doesn't make sense on a societal spreadsheet. The person experiencing the attraction starts to deny their own physiological and emotional reality. They think, I must be forcing myself to like them, or this must just be a phase.
They gaslight their own nervous system.
They really do.
They look at this person through the deduction system and say, well, they lose 20 points for their salary and they lose 10 points for their background. And because the final societal score is low, they completely invalidate the fact that this person makes them laugh harder than anyone else or makes their anxiety disappear.
Yeah, they ignore the most important parts.
They are essentially asking permission from society's imaginary deduction system to feel what their heart is already objectively feeling.
It is genuinely tragic. By denying their own genuine feelings, because those feelings don't match an external metric, individuals make their relationships hollow.
Hollow.
They end up dating a resume. They date the person who scores a 95 on the societal deduction scale, and they spend the next 50 years feeling incredibly lonely and unseen.
Because true attraction, the kind that sustains a multi-decade partnership through illness and stress and aging, is almost entirely found in unquantifiable things.
Completely unquantifiable.
You cannot put a numerical score on a sense of safety. You cannot put a metric on the deep, settling comfort of a conversation where you feel truly radically heard without judgment.
The psychological imperative here is profound in its simplicity. Do not try to retroactively logically explain why your heart moved.
Just accept the feeling. Don't build a PowerPoint presentation to justify to your friends or your parents why you feel safe with this person. Just lean into the safety.
Because relationships are built by the flawed. They are not formed by two perfect 100-point people meeting and existing in a state of static perfection. Perfection is static. It cannot grow. Relationships are formed by imperfect people colliding, creating friction, and shaping each other.
Demanding perfection, whether it's demanding you meet societal metrics or demanding emotional completion before you date, is a double-edged sword.
It cuts both ways.
If you demand it of yourself, you will inevitably project that impossible standard and demand it of your partner. And that creates an environment that is suffocating.
Truly suffocating.
There is no room to breathe, no room to make a mistake, no room to have a bad day or a moment of weakness.
It goes right back to that friend zone trap. We let our friends breathe. We let them be human. But we put our partners in that hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
Giving yourself permission to be flawed, giving yourself permission to just be a regular, messy, striding human being is the only way to let a relationship breathe.
The only way.
It's the only way to create a space where two people can actually connect through vulnerability, rather than just constantly auditing each other's point deductions.
So we've diagnosed the root causes. We've looked under the hood at the deduction system, the evolutionary roots of the last failure bias, the amygdala hijacking our hope, the procrastination of the unqualified complex, and the tyranny of societal scorecards. We know exactly why we're standing in our own way.
The machinery is clear.
Yeah. So the million-dollar question is, how do we actually rewire this machinery? How do we implement the addition system and build genuine self-affirmation?
The most crucial thing to understand about rewiring the brain about neuroplasticity is that it does not happen through grand, sweeping gestures. Self-affirmation doesn't come from a massive, sudden success.
It's not overnight.
No, you don't suddenly cure your deduction system programming by getting a massive promotion or losing 20 pounds or getting married.
Because the ghost of insufficiency will just move the goalposts again. You'll get the promotion, and the deduction system will just reset the 100-point scale at the new job level, and you'll immediately start losing points again.
Exactly. Real cognitive rewiring is built through tiny, daily accumulations. It is about actively overriding that last failure bias we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah.
To play the addition system game, you have to wake up in the morning and consciously set your score to 0.
0. Which sounds harsh initially. It sounds like you were saying, I'm worth nothing.
It sounds harsh to the ego, sure, but it is profoundly liberating to the nervous system. Because if you start at 0, there is nowhere to go but up.
Right.
Every single thing you do is an addition to the scoreboard. You woke up and got out of bed, plus 10 points. You did the dishes instead of letting them sit, plus 5 points. You managed to commute to work and speak politely to a coworker even though you felt anxious, plus 20 points.
So instead of these actions being the invisible baseline expectation that only prevents point loss, they become tangible, recorded
Yeah.
victories. They require energy, intent, and effort. In the deduction system, we take our own survival effort for granted. In the addition system, we finally acknowledge how hard it is just to be a human being on a given day.
If you have a terrible, exhausting day where everything seems to go wrong, but you still manage to feed yourself and get to bed safely in the addition system, you still ended the day with points on the board, you still accumulated something, you never end the day in the negative.
But how do we make that stick? Because I can tell myself I'm playing the addition game, but by 4:55 p.m. when I make that typo, my brain is going to revert right back to the deduction system.
Which is why cognitive behavioral strategies require somatic physical actions to anchor them. At the end of the day, instead of lying in bed mentally reviewing every awkward conversation or mistake, you have to physically write down just one thing you achieved or one positive action you continued doing.
Writing it down is the key mechanism.
Yes, writing it down moves the action out of the abstract, swirling anxiety of your mind and makes it a concrete reality in the physical world. Seeing it written down on paper turns a trivial action like, I drank enough water today, or I answered that difficult email, or I walked the dog even though I was exhausted. It turns those into tangible, undeniable proof of worth.
You're forcing it to be real.
You are physically doing the accounting for the addition system. You are forcing your visual cortex and your motor skills to participate in the rewiring of your self-esteem.
Now, I know some listeners are thinking what I'm thinking right now.
What's that?
If I lower my hurdle from 100 to 0, if I start giving myself gold stars for just doing the dishes, aren't I just coddling myself? Am I just letting myself go and giving up on excellence?
It is vital to understand that adjusting the baseline is not about spoiling or pampering yourself. You aren't lowering your standards. You are fixing a broken gauge that was constantly reading empty no matter how much fuel you put in.
A broken gauge.
By recognizing the small things, you are actually training your brain to see reality. And reality is that you are surviving, you are trying, and you are accumulating small victories every single day. Acknowledging reality isn't coddling, it's the foundation of genuine resilience.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize the core message of this entire exploration, it comes down to permission.
Permission, yes.
You have to give yourself permission to move forward, to engage with life, even with missing pieces. You'd not have to be complete or perfectly healed to participate in your own life.
You have to start imagining happiness not as a massive, sweeping movie ending where all problems are solved forever, because that doesn't exist. You have to imagine happiness as small, realistic moments of comfort today.
The little things.
The comfort of a good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
The safety of a conversation with a friend. The quiet satisfaction of adding 5 points to your score. That is what a sustainable, affirmed life actually looks like.
We've covered a massive amount of psychological ground today. Let's run through the critical takeaways really quickly. First, you have to consciously switch your internal accounting from a 100-point deduction system to a 0-point addition system. Give yourself credit for the immense effort it takes simply to show up and try.
Absolutely.
Second, recognize that the fear of happiness, that sudden urge to kill your own hope or cancel a date, is just your amygdala acting as an overzealous bodyguard. It's an echo of the past, a trauma response, not a truth about the future.
Third, stop waiting to be qualified for love or connection. Confidence and self-worth grow in the arena of human interaction, not in the isolated waiting room of perfectionism. Allow yourself to be a work in progress.
Yes, allow it.
And finally, track your daily micro-victories physically. Write down one thing you added to the board today, and slowly, methodically rebuild your neural pathways from the ground up.
It's about dismantling the rigged game you've been forcing yourself to play for years. But before we go, I want to turn it back to you for one final thought. We've talked so much today about this gap. The gap between the current self, the messy, anxious, striving person we are, and the ideal self, the flawless, 100-point deity we think we should be. We've framed this gap as the source of our self-denial and pain.
This raises an important question, something for you, the listener, to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, as you look at your own messy reality. We spend our entire lives trying to erase that gap, trying to finally reach the ideal self so we can rest.
Right, the finish line.
But what if the gap between your current self and your ideal self isn't actually a flaw? What if it isn't an error in the system that needs to be frantically corrected? What if that exact distance is the space where all of your life's meaning, growth, and connection are actually supposed to happen?
Wow, if there's no gap, there's no movement.
Think about it. Without that distance, there would be no journey. There would be no shared struggles to build deep, resilient relationships around. There would be no friction to create warmth. There would be no joy in discovering what small, beautiful thing you can add to your score tomorrow. The gap isn't a failure to be perfect. The gap is the canvas of your entire life.
That is a profound way to look at it. The distance isn't the problem, it's the playground. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. I want to encourage you, when you look at your day-to-day, do not look for what you missed. Do not look for the typo. Look for what you successfully added to the board. We'll see you next time.